Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle animation analysis video. And I actually did not think that we were going to be getting these essays today, though I suppose that makes sense considering the fact that, at least at the time of recording this video, these units come out in like 2 days basically. So it's cool that we have these before the data download, because sometimes it's the other way around. So it's going to be nice to take a look at these, and then we'll finally get all the assets and stuff like that. I have a lot to say about both of these units. Obviously, for this video, we are going to be focusing on the Sword of Hope Trunks, and then in the video that will go up after this one, we will be talking about the future Gohan. Now, the one thing that I did want to mention before I say my usual spiel, and we, watched the animations one time through, is as per usual, we are going to be watching them on JP, but I kind of never really noticed that they actually, or at least for this time, right, they fixed the aspect ratio, because usually on global, I believe it is like a little bit pushed in terms of like the essay and how they display it, but it seems like for these they're actually the same size. Maybe global I think is still like a tad bit smaller, but I swear they also did something to make global's essays look better. I don't know if it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, and it is kind of interesting that the color palette is a little bit different, but that's pretty consistent if you look at like Gohan here too. So very interesting, but good on you, Global. However, we are still going to use the JP ones just so I'll keep it consistent with all my videos. And obviously, we have a little bit more viewing space on here. Now, let's go ahead and go through this. Obviously, as per usual, I always like to watch these animations one time through first, and then we will take a look at them at slow motion. As well, I always like to note I am by no means a professional animator or anything like that. I just look at Dokkan essays all the time. I look at the assets that make them up and whatnot, and your boy thinks that he has a pretty good idea of what makes a good Dokkan animation. Now, with that being said, the other unfortunate thing is that because these essays just dropped in the full capacity, we don't have comparisons to use for this, because obviously I'm filming this video after they dropped in the AM hours of the morning. So that is a little bit unfortunate, but obviously we will do our best without the direct comparisons. Now, I will say I do know a couple of comparisons off the top of my head, because I have been seeing people talk about them. But overall, with the boy Trunks, right? Oh, man. We're going to talk about these as we go through these animations more, but I am extremely disappointed with these animations, to be 100% honest with you. I feel like these are some of the most mediocre LR animations that we have seen in a long time, and it's ironic because I feel like Vegito's 12 key is worse than a lot of Trunks' animations here, but I feel like that one's just bad, and these are just overall very, very mediocre. They're just not interesting to look at whatsoever, and it's such a shame because there's so many interesting concepts to play here. And this shot, we'll talk about it when we get to the end of the essay, but bro, what were they doing? I saw people talking about how next to a 2017 unit, the boy Tech transforming Trunks, this scene looked way, way, way better. So it is really unfortunate to see that this is the case for this guy. Let's go ahead and start off with the intro animation here. Ironically enough, I feel like out of all of the animations, this is actually Trunks' best one, which is sad to say that he peaks at the beginning and only goes downhill from here. Everything basically from this entire section, there is really not much that I can see any particular issues with, right? My handing Trunks the sword, I think, looks just fine. I will say, the Trunks sword does look kind of weirdly proportioned, but maybe it's just kind of the trick of the eyes. I feel like the handle is super big, and the actual, like, blade, the broken part, is really small, right? Like, even when it's in the hands of Mai, and even when it's in the hands of Trunks, it kind of feels like it switches a little bit, where like now the blade is super small, and well, I guess this is still really big, it's just kind of off screen, but Trunks' hands also look like super strange in this shot. Like, I don't know if this is just a matter of perspective at play, but I feel like they just not only look really weird, but the size of them feels incorrect to me. But this shot of Trunks staring at the sword, I think, is actually very nice. Definitely a very, very well done close-up kind of asset here. And then obviously you have the two kids shouting at Trunks, which appears in the reflection of the blade, which is really cool. And I think this shot is also very well done as well. And then, of course, having it fade away cuts back to Trunks doing the same pose, but then his facial expression changes, which I really like the facial expression change as well. And then I will say the key here is fantastic. First of all, they have a very nice impact frame for the transition of the actual Ki Blast swelling, right? We have the Ki Blast kind of shoot up from the bottom. Interestingly enough, Trunks grows a little bit, but that's kind of to give you the effect, obviously. You know, it looks good in motion, right? It's not meant to be paused like that. Ultra Instinct Trunks, done. But yeah, very cool impact frame. Obviously, kind of having that grow for a second to emphasize the aura kind of taking over around him. And I actually think that this white aura looks fantastic. It looks really nice. The way that it's animated with the glow, the movement, it looks fantastic. And I do like the bit of perspective that they have, where you can see it kind of in the background there behind Trunks looking at the sword. And even in front of him, right, just with a little bit of the white, in front of his face, right? Looks really cool, and Trunks' hair moving there is a nice little touch. I will say, before we move on to the tail end of this intro, there is one inconsistency that I noticed, and I'm kind of gonna say that maybe this is just something that was in the anime, and it's the reason why they animated it like this in Dokkan. If you look here, right, you can see that the edge of the sword is not straight, right? It's kind of like it was literally snapped off, right? Like it wouldn't be just a clean cut like another sword slashed right through it, right? It looks like the sword was snapped off, and you can see kind of the jagged edges of that. However, when Trunks is then holding the sword, it is a perfect straight edge, which is definitely like not a crazy inconsistency, but as you can see here too, right? Exactly when it goes back to then Trunks looking, you know, directly at the sword after you kind of had the first person POV, you are Trunks. Then when he's holding it in his hand again, it has like the serrated edge where it's not perfectly straight like that. And then it's perfectly straight again later. So, I don't know, like, that's definitely not a big deal. And I'm going to guess that that one is probably more to blame on the anime than it is on Dokkan for this one. But I just thought that that was a weird consistency, or inconsistency rather, excuse me. And I feel like they definitely could have just fixed that, even if that was how the anime did it. You know, just have Dokkan kind of improve upon it. Nonetheless, though, moving on from that, oh boy, this shot of Trunks. Now, unfortunately, I was gassing up this intro animation, and I think it really only goes downhill from here. Because after this very nice shot of Trunks, right, I really like this one, honestly. They kind of have it zoom out a little bit. His face feels a little bit more scrunched, like his eyebrows are almost like lifted up by the ends or something like that. This face doesn't look too bad, though, but what they do is they kind of try and have the zoom out effect where Trunks' face is super close up, and then they have a little bit of a zoom out to then go to here with a completely different angle and a completely different like style of asset, or then you have Trunks' arm kind of extend to in front of the screen. I will say, I know that Trunks is in base form and his hair kind of droops down a little bit, but I feel like it's almost too droopy here, which is a little bit weird to say. But then they do have Trunks back out a little bit more, where he's holding the sword out in front of him. And to kind of give you a bit of a cool little transition here, they have the sword slash across the screen, or more like, I guess, Trunks' hand with the sword in hand, right? Where they kind of blur it as it crosses the screen to then transition, which I will say, this is pretty cool with the way that they handle the lines, because the way that the lines are moving on the screen kind of makes your brain interpret this as the sword moving, right? And kind of like the edges of the sword slashing into a different direction, which is exactly what happens here, right? You can see now the blurry sword is facing up because obviously Trunks, you know, swiped the sword past the screen. So that is pretty cool. I definitely really like that transition. I actually think it's pretty nice in terms of like the sword, but I do think in full motion, the actual like execution of it doesn't really look that good. Like, I like the idea, but I feel like it's not executed well enough to really make me feel like this looks good. Like, I remember the first time I looked at this when I first saw the animations on the stream, or on the video rather, excuse me, I was like, oh, why does the transition look a little funky? I feel like even in regular speed it still looks a little bit strange, but I like the concept as to what they're going for. Then obviously we have Trunks get a little bit of energy on the edge of the sword there, right? When he's holding it up to the sky. And then obviously here you can see Trunks holding it sky high, where the sword then gets some ki on the end of it, right? Which I will say, I feel like this shot looks a little bit weird. Maybe it's just because of the fact that up until this point it was these really nice like close-up assets, and then you have this shot here. But I swear this asset just like for some reason doesn't look as good as I feel like it could. It kind of reminds me of like an older Dokkan asset for some reason. But with that being said, right, you have Trunks hold the yellow sword up in the air, and that is the end of the intro animation. And boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a ride. Because I feel like that is basically the best of what we have to look at today. I feel like that's even better than the Sword of Hope animation at the end, if I'm being honest with you. So we start off with the 12 key animation here for the boy Trunks. We have a little bit of a shot where it zooms out. And immediately, we do have this shot of Trunks zooming in a little bit, and then it's kind of weird, right? You would think that the whole point of this transition, right, like this little white flash of light here, besides kind of like making the sword grow a little bit bigger with power there, right? You would think that like the way that they would do that would be put it here to kind of mask this stinky pose change here, because this doesn't look good whatsoever. This looks like a free-to-play unit, or a unit from a couple years ago, an essay that they would do something like this. I was expecting Trunks' arms to move down a little bit before they at least did a pose change, or just have it move fully with fluid animation, but it's just one to the other. And keep in mind, this is a worldwide celebration unit, right? I know that sometimes it feels like maybe I'm a little bit too hard on some of these units, but this is a brand new premium unit for one of two of the biggest celebrations of the year, worldwide and anniversary. I expect these units to be top quality animation from top to bottom. If they're going to be slacking on other Dokkan Fests, right, like we had a Kale, and right before this, Tech Trunks, ironically enough, Trunks just getting shafted left and right. If they're going to be giving us animations like that, where they're super lackluster, these better be minty fresh, top of the line. So for these to be kind of a little bit stinky is just unacceptable in my book. Regardless, though, obviously we have Trunks bring his sword down here, and the light flashes as, you know, after he kind of throws it down, to then kind of have it ignite a little bit more. I do like the little sparks, energy that's kind of flying off of there. That is pretty cool, and as always, Dokkan always is absolutely crushing it with the lighting. They do a good job of kind of having the yellow light sort of show on Trunks' outfit here. That definitely looks pretty good. I like that shot a lot. By the way, the card art, we'll see it in the video, but it is super good. I really like the card art for this guy. So I do like the energy. I will say the energy actually flowing on the sword does look good. And here's what I'm talking about, bro. You're telling me that they could do it for this transition, but they can't do it for him bringing the sword down? As you can see, right, he's kind of standing here for a minute, and then you have this super nice little bit of minimal movement here, right, that's on screen for like 2 seconds, basically, right? Unfortunately, it also gets blinded by white light. You can see here that Trunks kind of moves his legs in a little bit, right? He's leaning down a small little bit, crunching his body a little bit, to then go into this pose, which unfortunately they do not follow through on this. I don't know why, again, this is not a full just white screen that appears here, because it feels like there should be one frame in between this, or like maybe 2, more like it, to kind of make it feel a little bit more fluid, that would be like a white screen. This would be the perfect opportunity, since they're having the screen glow this color anyway, to have the pose change, you know, happen in between a white screen. But no, they still have it be on screen, and then they fade out from the white. I don't understand. Usually they're so good about using those transitions where they mask the entire screen to their advantage, right? But for this one, no, apparently. We have Trunks charge forward. A little bit weird here, because Trunks' hair does not move whatsoever in this particular shot. And what's strange about that is right before that, for this particular animation, right, After Trunks actually slashes the sword down, you can see his hair is moving a little bit before he gets into the stable pose, right? You can see that his hair actually has a little bit of movement on it, so why it doesn't move here, I'm not sure. As well, this animation here, this section feels like something from a unit from a couple of years ago. This is like, I don't even know what words to use to describe what's on my screen. They are literally sliding this PNG across the screen with nothing else, right? They're even like not even really doing a good job with the background, because what they've been doing recently, they've kind of have the ground and the background move independently to kind of make it have a 3D sort of effect, but they are literally just sort of zooming in to the side of the background here. And finally with Trunks, you do get a little bit of movement because he does raise his arms a little bit to kind of raise the sword up before you get these little kind of like motion lines right on the screen. And then they transition into Big Boy Trunks here. But this particular sequence of an animation, I swear to you, the tech transforming Trunks from way back then, the one that just got the easy A, the one we were talking about in the video, I might have said that he came out in 2017. I think it might have actually been 2019. Don't quote me on the date, because I'm not positive on that. I'd have to look it up. But regardless, though, that Trunks, in a lot of aspects, had better animations than this one sequence of animation right here. When we finally get to the Big Boy Trunks, I feel like his face even here doesn't look correct. Like, I feel like his eyes are almost too big or too long or something like that. Like, they don't look accurate. Like, at least Trunks' face looks a little bit better here. This looks like a completely different artist. And also his hair. That is one thing that is very inconsistent with Trunks when he looks like this, especially in DBS, is that the thinness of his hair is super inconsistent. They don't know whether to draw it thick or thin when it comes to the bananas that are attached to the top of his head, right? Here it's like relatively thick, but it still feels a little bit more natural. And here it feels like they kind of thinned out his hair and like pulled it out a little bit more and extended it. It almost looks like a couple of those scenes in the Goku Black arc where the animation is just really not that good. Trunks' hair kind of looks like this. So maybe they're just trying to be anime accurate. I don't know. But we do have this transition where Trunks kind of goes past the screen here. They transition from this asset to this one, which again, Trunks' face looks extremely ugly here. And then another transition to the kind of side of Trunks where at least he does move his arm a small bit there. And then we finally have the shot of Trunks from the back. Now, this is like a common thing that Dokkan does, where they have a shot like this where a character kind of flies past the camera. This is certainly not anything new, but I feel like it doesn't look as good as it could. There are definitely versions of this kind of movement that I have seen that look a lot better on other units. Like, even if we look at this in normal speed, right? I still feel like it's a little bit, like, jarring. Like, it's a little bit better, certainly, but it's still like, whoa! It feels like there should at least be a couple more frames in between there, if I do say so myself. So then, moving on to Trunks actually flying forward, this is a little kind of funny that they just take this Trunks asset and then just tilt him forward, right? Before they finally get to this one where it's kind of from behind. And again, they just kind of zoom out on him. No movement on the hair, no movement on his clothes, nothing like that. And then Trunks... Are you kidding me, bro? Is this real? Am I watching a 2023 Dokkan essay, or is this a free-to-play unit from a couple years ago? Are you kidding me? You're telling me the best they could do was make this Trunks PNG look like this, and then just slide him up and kind of twist him a little bit? This is the type of thing that you would see like when you have like your action figure as a kid and you don't want to like change the pose on your action figures like hands and legs, and you're lifting them up in the air to then like crash down on your bad guy action figure. Like, really? That's the best that they could do, is just slide this PNG? They couldn't have Trunks bringing his arms back, right? They couldn't have his hair flowing in the wind. They couldn't have him arching his back a little bit more. Nothing like that. They then transition to this immediate cut where they have the slash, right? Obviously on screen, you can see the very nice little glow effect that they do have as he slashes Zamasu, which is pretty cool. That kind of light dissipating off of that. And then again, is this a little bit of a different asset? Yes, it's a little bit of a different asset because you can see the sword is kind of covered in a little bit of a different way. And then you have these couple of slashes against Zamasu here, which I will say, the slashes are pretty cool, right? I will say, I feel like one thing with this unit, especially compared to Gohan, is that the kind of impact of the attacks doesn't really feel like they have a lot of weight. But I will say this particular sequence right here definitely feels like Trunks is hitting Zamasu pretty hard. So I definitely will give them a W on that particular factor of that section of the essay. Moving on to that, though, obviously the enemy does fly away. I will say this does look a little bit strange to me. I can't really put my finger on it, so I'm not going to critique it too hard. But something about the way that Zamasu kind of flies away, and maybe this is just a Stinky Sprite moment, but Trunks just kind of standing there and then having the enemy fly away, moving past his, PNG there. It kind of looks a little bit weird to my eyes, but nonetheless, fantastic art for this bad boy. I will say I was really wondering how they were going to make this art unique. This looks very, very nice. Definitely like the way that this guy turned out for sure. We then have, after the card art is on screen, we have Trunks flying forward here, which finally we have a little bit of movement on Trunks here. And it's not just, him flying forward with this PNG for the entire sequence of this. Trunks' arms move up to the air right before they have a quick pose change to this, which, again, I always wish that there was more stuff in between frames like this whenever I see something like this in Dokkan, but it's definitely better than what we saw in the beginning of this essay, right? Trunks brings his hands together to grasp the sword, no movement on the hair once again, and pretty much the rest of the PNG just kind of stays stable. It is also interesting that Trunks never actually grabs the sword. It's just kind of like the implication of him grabbing for it. He never actually takes hold of it? Huh. Interesting. That's a little bit strange. I actually did not notice that before. We do have this shot here, though, where obviously it is supposed to be like the implication of the slash, which is pretty cool. I definitely like this sequence quite a bit, where, you kind of get just like the black and then the line on the screen, right? I definitely like that a little bit more, and then kind of transitioning to the, and then the of the attack. That's pretty cool. Trunks does have a little bit of movement here that kind of makes this feel a little bit more like, he's kind of moving after it, like a little bit of recoil almost type of thing. Obviously, the sparks flying off of the little effect are pretty cool. And then they cut to this shot of Trunks, which again, look how they massacred my boy. What is wrong with his face? What is wrong with my boy's face, bro? This is a bit of a yucky one, if I do say so myself. We do have Trunks then bring his arm back, and obviously after that, right, we have the slash against Zamasu, which looks okay. I definitely don't think it's too crazy. I do really like these little, like, spark effects that they have, though. And even though this does look kind of a little bit silly with the, pose just kind of being this, I think the reason why they did this is because then this becomes the KO screen. So I can definitely appreciate that, at least. That is a nice little, like, attention to detail and, implementing the animations with the gameplay really well. That final slash is okay, right? I definitely don't like the way that, like, zoom out to the pose kind of happens. And the style of Trunks' acid here, I feel like is shaded so much differently, right? Like this one specifically, I feel like is shaded just completely differently than this one. Maybe not like crazy different, but it still feels like there's a difference in shading to me that kind of makes it feel like it takes me out of the immersion a little bit, right? When it comes to these Dokkan animations. That was only the 12 key super, by the way. That is so wait, hold on, am I tripping? Was that? Yeah, that was the 12 key super, right? So the way that this animation works, by the way, because this is a little bit of an interesting one, and the way that they kind of display this animation in the video is a little bit confusing, but I'm going to do my best to kind of make it clear to you. Because technically, we don't have all of his animations in this video. However, also, it's not really that much different, but I'll explain it when we get there, right? So then, we have the standby skill, right? We have the standby skill activation where we have Zamasu looking over Trunks here. Goku and Vegeta defeated in the background. This shot does look pretty good. I really like the perspective that they have at play here. Trunks standing up looks pretty good. Obviously then raising his sword to the enemy. We then have, right, Trunks kind of getting the blue light around him that, you know, the iconic sort of rage slash sort of hope energy around him, right? We have the aura kind of just appear, to be honest with you. It kind of just fades in. I'm not sure if that's how it looks in the anime, and that's why they did it that way, but it definitely looks a little bit weird here. I feel like it could have been more of like a aura flaring up. Like, ironically enough, in the intro, right, when the aura, the base form aura, like, flares up around Trunks like this, they did a really good job of having it kind of appear there in more of like a meaningful way, rather than just having the asset of the, you know, key kind of just fade in on the screen, right? I do like the look of this, though. I will say the aura does look very nice, and the glow around Trunks, bro. Those homies use that light blue teal outer glow and call it a day. But that is how it looks in the anime, so I gotta give them credit where credit is due. This shot does look pretty good once the aura is obviously there. And then we have Trunks standing up with Zamasu. I will say this shot looks a little bit weird to me, but again, I'm going to chalk this one up to the anime. It just looks a little bit strange. Trunks' face looks a little bit strange, and the angle is just a little bit off to me. But I don't think that it's anything that's too bad. It is a little bit of like a weird kind of far away shot, though. And oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what it is about Dokkan effects and lag when there's a lot of particle effects on the screen, and it's not even like the phone that they're using or nothing like that, because this is how it looks in game. I'm not sure if it has something to do with like the way that the assets are coded or something, or if they just don't put in enough frames, but I need to show you this in full time speed to really show you what I'm talking about here. If we look at the energy forming a bunch of Trunks, it looks like it lags. Like, it looks like that the energy is almost like disconnected from the aura around Trunks. Like, if we look at the aura around him, the aura looks like, focus on this, it's at a normal speed, right? It looks like it's moving correctly. But if we then look at the aura that's forming above Trunks, it looks like it's lagging. It looks like a Windows 95 startup animation with the amount of frames that they got in that bad boy. It just does not match up with the rest of the animation, and ironically enough, this reminds me of Orange Piccolo, because when Orange Piccolo first transforms into the giant transformation, he has a similar thing, where the light first, like when he's coming up over the edge, right, and then there's that little ball, and it expands out the orange light, and then it shoots out across the screen, right, and then it zooms into Piccolo's face. That little orange effect of like the energy kind of flying out towards the screen, the SA lags in that section as well, which is kind of interesting that it's sort of like a similar effect at play here that Trunks has going on. I don't know if it's something to do with the fact that it's an effect or why. Unfortunately, my knowledge of the like coding and I guess the technical side of what makes that work or what would cause that to happen is not enough to be able to give you a concrete answer on that. If you do know, you can certainly let me know in the comments. I might have to ask some of the homies who know Dokkan animations in terms of like the coding aspect better than I do about why that might be the case. But it's just something really interesting that I wanted to point out in this video. After that, though, I will say I do kind of like the way that the light actually envelops the screen. I know this is going to be like frames that probably nobody cares about, to be 100% honest with you. And this is the type of stuff that unfortunately kind of gets swept under the rug when it comes to Dokkan animations. Hydrate or dihydrate, by the way, chat. Always got to say it once per video. When it comes to, like, the actual light enveloping Trunks, right, you can see for, like, one frame, he turns completely blue with the energy, which is pretty cool. And then you can see the light kind of actually, like, accents his body a little bit here, right? It's not, like, exact, but you can see the light kind of, like, shoots almost, like, around him and also envelops the entire screen here, which does look pretty cool, with it obviously kind of dissipating before it perfectly fades to white. That is pretty cool. I definitely like that transition a lot, if I do say so myself. And then obviously from the cut of white, we have the blue energy above the planet, which actually looks pretty good. I definitely like it the way that this looks. And then of course we have the spirit palm in the sky, which I will say it is a very cool little attention to detail that they have these little kind of like almost bits of fairy dust, right? But it's like the little bits of energy that are coming off of the Genki Dama I think that that is pretty cool. Oh my gosh, I never realized that it transitioned like this before. I gotta be honest, like, this shot right here kind of reminds me of that, that cowboy meme where they're like singing above the mountain and they're like screaming or yodeling or something like that. That's what this shot kind of reminds me of. I know that's such an obscure reference. Hopefully somebody in the comment sections knows what I'm talking about, but this is a very interesting way to transition it, but I'm sure that this is probably how they did it in the anime, so that's why they decided to do it that way. And I don't think it looks bad. It's a lot better when they do like a fade like this between scenes, right, to transition between camera angles rather than transitioning between, like, you know, actual asset movement. So I definitely think that this looks pretty good, albeit a little bit funny just because now it's making me think of that meme. But I like this shot a lot with Trunks, actually, where he's standing here with kind of like the oh look on his face, with obviously the energy, the Genki Dama coming down. And the movement is actually pretty nice on Trunks' head, I will admit, with him tilting his head down here. I think that looks good. And of course, the energy on the sword turning blue. By the way, again, oh boy, we're going to talk about you in a second. The energy looks pretty cool here, but I will say the sword is also looking like a little bit more of a clean cut. It kind of looks a little bit jagged, but again, not consistent with how it's looked throughout the essay, in terms of like how the sword is actually broken. So Vegeta, I think Goku actually looks pretty good here. It's nice that they remembered. I mean, I assume they would because obviously they're taking it from the particular scene, but obviously Goku's chest was wrapped up here because this is where he got stabbed by Goku Black's like little key hand sword blade, when he talked about what he did to Chi-Chi and Goten. But I'm not sure if this is trying to reference the anime once again in terms of the way that this looked. By golly, ladies and gentlemen, what is wrong with Vegeta? Why does he look like that? He looks deformed, if I'm being honest with you. I'm really not sure why he looks that way. And not to mention, it also kind of feels a little bit even weirder when they actually transition to his movement, because once he actually lifts his arm up, by the way, I do like the light coming down here from the top. That's a cool little detail. What is wrong with my boy's arm? Before we even talk about the animation here, right? First of all, Vegeta's legs are huge. Vegeta's arm is huge. Vegeta's head is really small. And even his body is just super disproportionate with how much it extends out in the back here. I saw someone on Twitter call this corrupted future Vegeta or something like that, because obviously Merge Zamasu has the giant arm on the side of his body. That is pretty funny, if I'm being honest with you. But the anatomy here is just so not correct, right? And it's weird because Goku looks fine, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with Goku back there. He looks completely normal to me, but Vegeta's just body looks so strange here, right? Let's take this to the frame by frame, right? Vegeta closes his eyes. Goku begins to lift his hand up. He opens his eyes. Homie looks terrified, looks flabbergasted, in fact. Vegeta raising his arm up here doesn't look too bad. Even like the little bit of the eye open there doesn't look too bad. This is where it starts getting a little bit wonky, though. You can see his arm looks really, really big there. Goku's still kind of looking normal. And then obviously Vegeta extending his arm out before giving it this pose, right? With, funny enough, the asset for his hand actually just like stretches. It's not actually changing. They're just kind of pulling it a little bit, which is kind of interesting. And then obviously, oh, it actually has a little bit of like a sproing. Bro, is my boy using some Gumu Gumu no attacks, bro? Is my boy Luffy? Why is his hand stretching like that? So then obviously we have a little bit of like the white energy, which is of course the energy going from Goku and Vegeta into Trunks, which just looks pretty cool here, with obviously the energy flowing into him. And I do like the way that Trunks' asset looks here. It is a very, very nice shot from the back, right? I definitely like the way that it's stylized in terms of the asset. And then we do cut to the front. I'm sure that this is how the anime did it, but by golly, I would have loved like a 3D sort of rotoscoping effect to turn around to the front of Trunks here rather than just having the one frame there. But I'm sure that's how it was in the anime, so fair game. But this shot does look really good. I like the way that Trunks looks here. I love the way that the energy looks around him. The ki looks great. The energy on his actual sword looks really good, right? Trunks' eyes here, the zoom in, everything looks fine for the rest of this animation. It's weird because I feel like basically the parts with Trunks in this particular animation, right, in the standby skill activation Most everything looks alright here, besides the couple of nitpicks that we had throughout. But it's just, for some reason, Vegeta just looks really strange throughout this entire animation. I'm not really sure why. I still think the intro animation looks better than this overall. It's a lot more consistent with the good animation. But, okay. Here is where we get to the confusing part of this, right? Funny enough, by the way, did you see that? They had a, I think that might be a little bit of a mistake there. They had like a one frame there of the Cybermen on the screen. Yeah, that's definitely a an error on the devs' part for leaving in this one frame, because usually they just cut this out of the video. Do they even have... Interesting. This is definitely some kind of dev thing that they're able to just activate the SA, because you can see that these are just random enemies here, right? Tien, Chaozu, and Frieza, and then this is 3 Cybermen, and it looks like there's not even anybody else on the team. Do they have no HP? They have 0 HP. Yeah, that's definitely some kind of like dev menu thing that they have access to. Kind of interesting that they left that in there, but nonetheless, we then go into Trunks' 18 key here, right? As you can see. And the interesting thing about this, right, is that this is the 18 key, as far as I understand it, right? If someone in the comments tells me that I'm wrong and I'm wrong on this, you can absolutely check me on this, because this is how I understood it from reading the kit and everything like that. But the way that this works is that this will also be Trunks' 18 key super when he doesn't have the blue aura around him, right? When he is in the regular form, right? Before he activates the standby skill, right? When his card art is this super attack will still be his 18 key super. However, he will just not be surrounded by the blue energy here. They're just doing this as an easier way to kind of showcase the animation, because then they obviously don't have to show the 12 key and the 18 key for the non-blue Trunks, right? And then show the 12 and 18 key, which is just the same animation, but obviously he's covered in blue for the 12 key and 18 key. So, you know, by going by that logic, I am assuming as well that the 12 key super also does the same thing, where here he would basically just have the blue sword instead of the yellow one, and he would be covered in blue light. Now, I don't know how that will work for the yellow slashes and whatnot, if that will end up being blue and they'll kind of change the effect of that as well. It almost kind of looks like, to me, throughout these animations, I almost wonder if the background is like a little bit darker because they're trying to kind of show a little bit more of that effect of the blue on Trunks. But that might just be how this essay actually looks, because obviously the future Trunks arc is kind of super dark anyway, in terms of the color palette. So if I am wrong on that, though, I guess it really won't matter in my entire explanation once the data download comes out, and you can, you know, correct me in the comments on that one. But because obviously these videos are coming out before the data download, I have to include that in the video. Sorry, future individuals watching this video after the data download is in the game and you've already pulled this unit. But anyway, that is how the 18 key super and the 12 key super works for this guy. So like I said in the beginning, unfortunately that means that we're technically not looking at all of the animations, because you know, it's not every single 12 key and 18 key super, but there will be basically no difference besides just the fact that Trunks has blue outer glow on him and the sword will be blue. And maybe some of the colors for the slashes and stuff like that. So for the beginning of the 18 key super, we have Trunks kind of zoom in a little bit there, right? You can see that obviously we have a little bit of a zoom into this asset. I feel like Trunks' head looks a little bit weird here, but again, this is just kind of a nitpick. I think it's okay, right? This is another thing too, by the way, I've been talking about recently in a lot of my animation analysis videos. I feel like I've been saying this for months now, almost. Hydrate or dihydrate, by the way. That they kind of do this little thing where they sort of have like an intro animation for the SA. Like, it's not exactly an intro animation, but it's intro animation-esque, where they kind of have like an introduction to the SA, where the character is either like standing there, or, you know, they do some specific action or something like that, to kind of like introduce the SA, where I feel like before sometimes they would just get right into the action. But nonetheless, though, obviously the little blue glow on Trunks does look good, and I like the way that the actual glow on the sword looks. I will admit, for a kind of teleport away or just moving very quickly, this one is a little bit of a sorry one. I'm not going to lie. Trunks jump scare, by the way. With how Trunks disappears here, I like these kind of smear frames, but doing this for the character being fully on screen and then just putting the lines in front of him, I feel like is just so silly and it doesn't really look that good, right? I feel like there's plenty of other Dokkan animations where a character teleports or moves super quickly that look much better than that. We do have Trunks teleport in, though. Again, they kind of do a little funny with the lines here where they kind of just have the lines photoshopped over the character for them teleporting in. But it's not the worst thing ever, right? They do have a little bit of that blur effect there, too, which is nice. But then we have Trunks come down. Unfortunately, again, this is just a static PNG. There isn't any nice little minimal movement on this for some higher tier units like there should be. And we immediately cut from this kind of faraway shot to then this close up. I don't know why they didn't just zoom in and then transition the assets, because this looks very jank even in the, you know, regular speed. But we then zoom into Trunks again rather than having him actually like move up until, as you can see, right, when we finally get a little bit zoomed in, then you can see that his hands do actually move towards the sword there to grab it. Which is kind of, again, really weird that they don't have him actually grab the sword. Because you can see, right, if we go to right here, it's like he's about to grab it, right? And then, bam, his hand goes back, and then immediately we're at this shot where it's in his hands. That's twice now that that's happened in this essay. I don't know, that really feels like cutting corners to me. I want to say that that's just something that they did in the anime, and maybe that's why it looks like that. But I feel like that's just Dokkan doing that. I don't know. That would feel really weird to me if I went back and watched the anime and it was like that. However, we do have the sword kind of slash forward here. It's kind of interesting that you can see that it sort of lines up here, but then it cuts off a little bit at the edge there. That's kind of interesting. We obviously have the slash forward here with the sword, right, with a little bit of motion lines. This is a pretty cool transition, I will admit, going from this angle of the sword slashing forward to then obviously having already slashed Zamasu with the blue line there, with a static PNG once again. Oh, no, hold on. Trunks' hair does move there. Okay, WW. You'll love to see a little bit of minimal movement. That's pretty nice. Obviously, then Trunks moves down a little bit and then jumps forward. I will see this pose transition isn't too bad. I feel like it could definitely be a little bit better. But nonetheless, though, it transitions into Trunks kind of zooming forward a little bit. Does he move his asset at all here? No. No, the sword does move because it gets a little bit closer to his head there, so his arms also move too. And then they transition to this. Trunks, by the way, here looks like a gremlin or something. I don't know, bro. His face looks very strange there. They do have a little bit of movement on his hair there. Bro, what is this? They don't have another frame in between that? Really? Okay. We then... What? You're telling me they go from this pose, like this, to then having the movement of Trunks' body actually moving correctly? And he moves the sword back to swing it forward? Which I think may actually be the same... Is that the same asset? That's why I'm rewinding. It's like on the edge of the hair there. How does it look here? Surely that's not the same. It looks very similar. I would have to see a side by side. If the frame of Trunks, right here is the same as this one, right? Where it's literally before he winds up and he's just about to do it. I wonder if they just reuse that asset. That's really interesting. Anyhow, obviously then Trunks swings the sword forward, which this face looks so much better. It's still not perfect and it's still not great, but it definitely looks a lot better than this one. We do have him bring the sword forward. Again, I wish there was a little bit more movement on this in terms of like poses in between those shots, but you then have Trunks slash forward, and it's kind of weird too because they don't have him like actually slash. It's kind of a distraction of the eyes where they give you this blinding light shot with the slash across the screen. I will say this is definitely a lot better, certainly than the ones we were looking at in the beginning of this essay, where they kind of distract your eyes. They don't have to have the full movement happen because they have this little flash on the screen, and then you realize, oh, it's already happened, where the character has already slashed the enemy. Then, obviously, Trunks brings his hands back. It kind of looks like that he's... That's really weird. That movement definitely does not imply what I thought it was going to, and it would have already hit Zamasu by that point. Wait, this is so weird. So Trunks obviously moves his sword this way, right? And then this angle kind of looks like that he's going to, you know, stab it forward, kind of like a spear type of deal, right? But then it's actually a slash. where you can see that it's slashed against Zamasu and now the sword is up in the air before he then brings it forward to slash again. But that doesn't really make any sense, because if the sword is here, it would have already hit Zamasu if it's at this point, right? Or it would already be like cutting through Zamasu. That doesn't make any sense that it then ends up behind him and that he's already slashed Zamasu. You understand what I'm saying, chat? The perspective is just really strange on that one. I want to look at that in full-time speed after we finish this particular animation sequence. Yeah, so then obviously he whips it back to then slash once again. And then obviously with Trunks holding it back one time again, he slashes it back again. His arms look a little weird there, but I'm sure that it's fine. The hair does move a little bit there, which is kind of nice. Does move? What was I saying there, bro? The hair does move a little bit there, which is some nice little minimal movement. And then we have another pose transition. I feel like at this point, bro, I'm just a broken record with this particular sequence of animation, where it's just these rapid-fire pose changes that need way more frames in between them than they have for this particular sequence of animation. It is just not enough to really make this look good. So let me see in full-time speed with this particular section here, right? Slash, slash, slash. Okay, it definitely looks a lot better in the movement, for sure. It looks a lot better when it's in full-time speed. The slashes do feel a lot more impactful. I still do think if you really focus on that one slash, the one I was talking about where it kind of looks like he's just going to jab him and then he doesn't, it still looks a little bit strange if you really focus on it, but I think when you're in the heat of battle, it isn't really going to be that big of a deal. Alright, so now we cut from the black screen to then this shot here of Trunks getting ready to kick Zamasu, which I will say this kick is pretty nice. I do like that they have a little bit of a recoil on Trunks too, where it's not just like he kicks it and then he's just stale. They actually have him kind of, move back a little bit, which is pretty nice. Zamasu breaking through all these rocks here, and then we have this card art, which is really cool. I actually like this one a lot. I think I, ironically enough, almost like the first card art more, but I do like this one quite a bit. With everybody in the background, it's pretty cool. And then, of course, we have Trunks come through the smoke again with the, poses here. I just really feel like they did not do enough good of a job of transitioning between this sort of stuff. Like, with this one, this is literally just, again, a static PNG moving across the screen, right? Finally, you do have Trunks' limbs kind of move a little bit at the end there, but still, it feels really static up until that point, and Trunks doesn't really break through the smoke here, right? You can see that it is quite literally just one frame where Trunks is then screaming. And again, this is another shot where Trunks' face just looks a little bit weird to me. I'm really wondering, with all of these, kind of off-looking faces, if it was just the B team working on this unit, or if it was, the fact that they were just trying to reference it to the anime, and the anime really just had these kind of wonky looking faces. I'm really not sure, but it is quite disappointing. And ironically enough, up until this point, it really feels like I'm kind of saying a lot of the same things that I was saying last year about the Worldwide Celebration Part 2 LRs, where I really felt like their animations were lacking a lot, especially Metal Cooler. I feel like it's basically like Future Gohan is the Goku and Vegeta of last year, and Metal Cooler is Trunks this year, with definitely, though, Future Gohan's animations being a lot better than Goku and Vegeta, I would say. But nonetheless, obviously Trunks then brings his sword to slash again. With this particular shot here, I definitely think that the slash is pretty decent looking. Again, I just kind of wish... What is going on there? What is wrong with my... Bro, Dragon Ball Super Episode 5 type beat? Oh my gosh. Listen, bro, I was talking about the faces looking a little wonky before. By golly, that is a little silly looking, if I do say so myself. But I actually do like this particular slash, despite the face looking a little bit weird. It feels a lot more like they actually put more frames into this that should be there for this, right? It feels a lot more fluid in terms of the animation, right? Trunks lifting his arms back, right? then kind of readying up a little bit, and then finally bringing them forward for the slash. And obviously they do kind of cut a little bit out here where they then have the white slash on the screen to then, you know, kind of cover up the fact that it does the slash down all the way and it just cuts. But it still looks pretty good here, and I really like the blue as well, the blue key effect there. And Trunks' face there actually does look pretty good, if I do say so myself. Now, with this, right, this kind of looks like a reference. I'm assuming this is supposed to be like a reference to Mecha Frieza here too. But obviously this kind of just jump cut to white is really weird. I obviously like it when they do these little cuts that's supposed to be like the key effect kind of is making this white little flash appear on the screen, like we were kind of just talking about with Trunks slashing this down, right? Like, this is a lot more interesting, and obviously it feels a lot more correct because it's like, oh, the key is slashing, you know, across the screen and the enemy's getting hit with it, and it's like these anime-esque effects. But using this as a transition of this white screen is just jarring. I would almost have rather they just did a hard cut, which is crazy because I barely ever like it when they do hard cuts in scenes like this, but I feel like that honestly would have been better in this particular shot. But we have Trunks obviously slashing the enemy with the static PNG once again, where it's just kind of floating down. Before Trunks then goes up again, like, it's just these weird jump cuts of the poses that are really getting me. You zoom in, what is wrong with his back? My boy got the roundest back I've ever seen, bro. Hunchback of Notre Dame type beat, bro. The immediate transition from this to this is not okay. This is definitely way too much of a jump in logic, I feel like. You have to have something in there where he's like raising the sword or turning his head or something from just going from this to this. Definitely not enough in between those two. However, this shot of Trunks does look pretty good with him flying forward. And ironically enough, me talking about all the little things that they've been missing for basically like the entirety of this essay, they do actually do a very good job of here. You can see that Trunks' hair obviously is moving for this entire shot. And not to mention, the key sword actually looks really good with the way that the aura obviously kind of disperses a little bit out in kind of like a blast-like fashion there, rather than just being like a straight line that kind of flies at the enemy. And we then have the, I believe, final shot of the 18 key. Thank God, I really wanted to move on from this animation. We have Trunks just like slash forward, right? Kind of implying that the enemy is back there, and obviously he's moving forward. Is there any movement on his hair? Not that I can see. This is just, okay, they do have it at the end though, at least. This is just kind of a PNG sliding forward. I will say that explosion effect does look really good. Trunks' chin looks a little bit weird. My boy kind of got that Crimson Chin vibe going on right now, where it looks a little bit too long on his head. Alright, so we finally get to the big kahuna, ladies and gentlemen. We finally get to the finish skill, right? Very fitting that the Spirit Sword Trunks would be the finish skill. Now, this is a bit of a weird one, because I think that the animation is not that good, but I really like the style of the way that the assets look here. Let's go through it. So, Trunks' hair looks a lot more gold, right, in this particular scene than it did in basically the entirety of these essays, right? Even when he had the glowing light before, right? And of course, that's just kind of the difference in color palette in the particular scenes. But I will say, for a lot of these actual essays, it feels like a lot more of like Dokkan animations, whereas if I were to see this screenshot like out of context, and I didn't know any better, I would think that maybe this particular screenshot is from the anime, because this is like just still looks really good, like still frame, right? But we then get into the actual animation of it, the meat and potatoes. So Trunks kind of leans down a little bit here, as you can see, kind of squatting down to get ready to fight Zamasu. We have a cut to his face, which I gotta admit, his face looks really good in this particular shot, right? Definitely very, very nice looking, if I do say so myself. They did a very good job making this look anime accurate, and it feels a lot better looking than half the stuff in this essay, right? Trunks looks like Trunks. The mouth flaps are pretty good. Definitely like the way that this looks. I will say the transition into the other facial expression is a little bit kind of jarring, I feel like. I wish it would have been something a little bit more, I don't even really know, like just a better change in expression where they kind of have his face kind of like twist into that a little bit more than just having it. But I guess to be fair, it's already so close. How would they have done that? I think it doesn't help that it also makes it feel more jarring that they have this nice close-up and then they throw all these motion lines in your face. Usually I'm all for this kind of thing when it comes to anime speed lines and motion lines and like intensity lines, I guess is kind of what you would call this. But I feel like in this it almost kind of like is sort of distracting and a little bit jarring, right? But the transition, or not the transition, but the face after, right, what would be the transition. I do kind of like this expression. Obviously, it's supposed to be intense and kind of crazed, like Trunks is like, all right, I'm finally going to do it, you know? So I think that the expression is pretty good. His eye does maybe look a little bit weird there, but I think overall it looks fine. So then, right, we have this part where Trunks is obviously pulling the sword back, right? The beginning of this pretty iconic scene from the Goku Black arc, right? Obviously, Trunks pulling the sword back before, and a very nice, by the way. This is something that was missing from the entirety of the essay. It's really hard to see when I go the frame by frame here. You can see that small little bit of movement, right, that you saw on the blue sword as it was kind of like moving down a little bit. It's really hard to see, but you can see just that little bit of slight movement there. That is something that I feel like a lot of really good Dokkan essays have, and it makes them feel a lot more lifelike and realistic rather than just looking at a PNG on the screen stand there. And definitely this animation could have stood to have a lot more of that in it, because by golly, the animations for this one were not great. But we do have Trunks stance up here, right? Obviously changing his footing position to then get ready to fly forward. This particular shot where he flies forward I think is fine, right? Obviously kind of flying past the screen. And then they cut to behind Trunks where obviously he's flying towards Zamasu again. A static PNG with no movement, no hair moving, no clothes moving, right? None of the rips on all of his clothes moving around, nothing like that. And we have Trunks stab forward, which they do obviously have a different asset for, where he is now stabbing into Zamasu, right? I do like this little explosion of the white effect there, which is pretty cool, right? And the actual light that they have kind of pour out of this. Kind of interesting. Wait, was he missing it? Okay, no, he wasn't. For some reason I was like, wait, is he missing the blue aura? So they have the like kind of beam shoot out of them. And then they have this amazing setup here, right? They have this fantastic beginning bit where the energy explodes inside Zamasu, and you have all these little, like, you know, kind of dust particles or like little bits of ki that are shooting off the spirit sword. You have the nice little effects shooting out the back, right? Which is pretty cool. You have like the air from the impact of the blast like shooting out, right? Which is really cool, right? The obviously effects that are coming from where the spirit sword is kind of shoved inside him, right? And you have Trunks move down to his feet, which looks okay. It's not crazy, but it's nothing that I would really, you know, kind of go crazy about. And then you have Trunks stand there, right? The screen gets a little bit more blue, right, for this. And then you have Trunks here readying up the attack, with him obviously having the sword, you know, stabbed into Zamasu with a little speech that he gives here towards the end, a little bit of shaken effect there. And then he is going to lift up the sword. Now, on this actual sequence where he lifts up the sword a little bit, you know, he kind of brings himself down a little bit to ready himself to slash back up. Oh boy, the frames with this one are so confusing to me. So they have him kind of go down a little bit more intensely, right? And then they kind of have him tuck his head in a little bit more. And then they have him go all the way up here, right? Nothing in between that. And then they finally have him screaming with then the sword kind of going up. That is so many different pose jumps that I feel like if they were going to make any animation look pristine and super fluid, it would have been this one. Because this would have been the one, I mean, it's literally the whole point of this unit, the spirit sword, right? You would think that this would have been the one shot that they would have at least not had all these jumps, right? But no, for this one even still, it's still the same thing that we've seen pretty consistently throughout the entire thing. It is just a little and then obviously he slashes up with the blue light kind of enveloping him, which I do like that. I like the little speed lines they got there too. The final lift, I will say it's okay that they kind of jump there, because obviously the implication is that Trunks is whipping up the sword to kind of go through the enemy. And then they obviously have it above his head already, so you don't really see him actually slash it up. And I know you're probably thinking like, okay, we're going to see some crazy lighting effects after the purple light that's coming out of Zamasu here, the little flowing energy that's coming out of him. No. That's it. He just fades away. Are you kidding me? This is it. This is the big worldwide part 2 unit. This is the character that, you know, the whole celebration is themed around connection, and the future Trunks connects the future and the past. And this is the ending? There's no crazy effects, right? I know we were talking about in the beginning that the Tech 1 for the Spirit Sword attack has this like giant pillar of light that is there, right? From obviously emanating from the Spirit Sword. But no. It's just this. It's so empty. It's so lifeless, I think is a great way to describe it. I will say, the only thing I can really give this is I do like the little bit of energy that they have for Zamasu that kind of just dissipates there, right? Like the little flame that kind of burns out, right? You can see it even kind of dissipating off the top before it just sort of disappears. I like that little animation. I think that's cool, but it is certainly missing that big climactic finish with the exploding key and all that. It is nice that they do have the lighting down, though. Like, the light from the sword is kind of illuminating this area, but that's it. That is all that is there at the end. Now, I will say the interesting thing is that somebody pointed out, shout out to the homie Annie for finding this tweet from a JP Twitter user. I'm not exactly sure who this is. I've never seen their Twitter account before for the Japanese Twitter user here. But obviously the Trunks animation there, right, you can see... apparently, they took it as a reference from the Xenoverse version of this cutscene, where Trunks slashes Zamasu, right? And then the kind of final shot looks like this, where Zamasu just dissipates, and then Trunks is just kind of left standing there with the sword in his hand before it disappears. I don't know why they decided to reference this out of all things. And I don't even think this cutscene from Xenoverse looks bad. I mean, obviously it looks fine, right? It's a newer Xenoverse cutscene as well, so it looks even better. But to take from this is just such a strange decision to me. And, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily compare, like, the climacticness, if that's even a word, of, like, the Xenoverse cutscene. I'm not going to even really commentate on that because I haven't played the full DLC to, like, know the context and see the full scene. I mean, I know what happens in the anime, obviously, but in reference to Dokkan, like, for the finisher, I mean, it's called the finish skill. You would want it to be climactic and crazy and have some awesome-looking end or something like that, right? I will give it this, right, with, and by it, I mean Gohan Beast. I know it's kind of weird to bring up his animation in this video, but at least for his active skill, even though it's just a PNG, they have a little end thing for him. Even though this is, like, the end of the animation, maybe to feel more climactic with this ending, they could have had some shot of Trunks, like, just kind of standing there holding it, or something like that, right? Looking from above. Maybe that could have been the solution. I mean, obviously the solution is just to put more effects on it, like there should have been from the beginning. But yeah, that is the brand new Fizz Future Trunks from the 2023 Worldwide Celebration. This was quite the long video, but obviously your boy had quite a bit to say about these animations. I really just don't feel good about these, to be 100% honest with you. I think that it's just really sad to see that this is what the high quality sort of big selling point of an anniversary type of unit has become, that they can have animations that are this mediocre. Like, there are some things in this that are just bad, but I feel like an overall just general, that like Vegeta here is definitely bad. But overall, I just feel like these are really mediocre, kind of lifeless, lackluster. They just don't really invoke too much emotion in me. And I'm somebody who likes the Sword of Hope Trunks, right? Despite the ending of DBS, I think it's just a cool scene. And obviously, I know a lot of people feel like the series for, you know, the Goku Black arc should have just ended with this scene, which I think I would agree, honestly. But I just think that the entire concept of the Sword of Hope is really cool. And for them to kind of just do it so dirty in this way is just so unfortunate to me. Because obviously this is going to be like the only Sword of Hope Trunks that we have for like basically the rest of the game, right? Because they basically exhausted everything that they could do with this, you know, in this unit and the previous ones that we've had. So, I don't know. In my mind, it's very disappointing. And it's also really disappointing from the perspective of like he was supposed to be the main character that kind of connected the entire celebration together. All of the units are related to Trunks in some way, obviously the theme being connection, like I mentioned earlier in the video. So I think it's just extremely disappointing, and I don't even think that like the concepts for the unit are necessarily bad in terms of like the animations. Like, I like the fact that his animations change depending on whether you're in the standby skill or not, where you have like the blue energy from the spirit bomb around him or whatnot, right? I think that's really cool. And doing stuff that is like Dokkan original animations like we've seen, you know, in a little bit of this, you know, celebration are really good too. But I think just overall with this unit, I think it's just a yikes. It's just really disappointing. And I almost feel like ever since they implemented Carnival LRs, I feel like we have really seen a huge decrease in animation quality with LRs specifically. I would like to make a full video about that at some point. Honestly, I feel like overall even Dokkan animations have kind of gone down in quality, except for like a couple specific ones, right? Like, it definitely feels like with modern Dokkan animations, they focus on one unit and make it just the most insane thing your eyes have ever seen, right? But then the rest of the animations are either just mediocre or bad. Like kind of we talked about with Vegito. Vegito's 18 key and active skill are fantastic, but the rest of his animations are kind of just or with the 12 key for Vegito specifically, it's just terrible. So I would like to make a full video on that. Let me know if you would be interested in that sort of thing, because it's just something that I've noticed from taking a look at these Dokkan animations for so long, doing these animation analysis videos, and especially ever since those Carnival units, I feel like we've just seen a really big decrease in quality. But please let me know what you think in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this unit. Let me know if you're going to be summoning for this guy as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video. Thank you so much for making it to the end. If you are here, comment banana. I don't know why. It's just for some reason. You know, it's because I got my smoothie on my desk and I had a banana in my smoothie earlier. That's why I'm thinking of banana. If you made it this far in the video, comment banana, bro. Maybe for Trunks' hair as well. That also kind of fits. But thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the worldwide celebration, and I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.